Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I am excited to talk to you about this AI-first future. So, in this crowd, who here has experienced the buzzword AI first before I brought it up? Okay, a lot of hands. And by the way, in case you're wondering if your echo chamber is a little different from other echo chambers, I was presenting maybe 2 weeks ago or so to about 150 business leaders who are not technology leaders and also politicians, and I asked them, and only 3 hands went up. So there is something about echo chambers, right? This is a different audience from the rest of the world, which means any time that you're feeling overwhelmed and like, oh my goodness, what are these things happening? And I can't keep up with them. There are others. It's just what I'm saying. But for you, let's talk about this buzzword, this AI first thing, and what it means for you, for your organizations, and for the world. The future is AI first, apparently. Except, what on earth is this AI first thing? What is it? Now, there have been some companies that have made strides in making themselves AI first. The OG of this was Google. That was 2016. But recently, there have been some others that have sent out company-wide memos telling all their staff to use AI or else in some shape or form. Anyone in the audience sent one of those out recently? Okay. Oh, okay, right. So in order to do this well, because I'm a huge fan of the idea that since the world is changing, we have to be realistic about how it's changing, and we need to change with it. And if anybody is kind of holding their breath about AI, not in this room, don't worry, that's not for you. You know AI is here to stay. But out there, those who are like, oh, this is just NFTs all over again. No, my friends. It stays. And so you can't sit this one out. And so then to catch up to a world that is going this way regardless, we may as well lean into it. But there are smart ways to do it, and in my opinion, maybe ways that I wouldn't encourage. So on my newsletter, that's on decision.substack.com, I published an AI first memo that I wrote for my team, for my company at Kozyr. And what it says, essentially, for those who want to skip the reading and just listen to me talking, which is what I'm supposed to do, so I shall do it, is that if you want a for everybody take on AI, a great for everybody take for the individuals in your organization, it's going to be different from AI as an at-scale automation technology. So first, I really want you to split this into, are you talking at the individual versus the organizational level? And too often, folks who are just getting themselves introduced to AI, it takes a while. It takes a while to nudge them into, start using it. Come on, folks, why are you reading about it or listening about it when it's so easy to just use it, right? And eventually you nudge them enough that they go onto some interface, let's say your ChatGPT or whatever else, and then they discover just how much they can boost themselves. And then they attempt to make a leap to thinking that this applies throughout the organization. And I would say maybe these things don't transfer quite so well. So let's talk about what AI first is, how to do it in a way that's responsible, and also how to separate the individual from the organizational level. So for the individual, let's start there. It is super easy, but you'd think that I would recommend that AI firstness should mean, how can AI do this for me, right? Maybe that's what the influencers are saying, and I keep trying to hide from the fact that I am one. So I just say them others, they are saying, how, try AI, use it for something. How can AI do this for me? And I am a contrarian AI influencer, if you will, and that might be because I'm a recovering statistician, which means I will never stop being grumpy, but I will always be trying to recover. And so I always suggest, hey, instead of starting with AI, how about start there How can I do this better? And now we realize that inherent in this is a small problem. Because if you thought that you were going to use AI to not think, skip thinking, actually, this is a big one, because in asking how to do this, whatever this is, better, you now have to slightly step back and go, wait. What is worth doing better in the first place? Which means, what are my priorities? What are the things in my life which, if I could do them better, would end up with better outcomes for me? And there is no single one answer to this. This really depends on what you need for your life. So an AI-first attitude at the individual level is really saying, what is so important in my life that I would like to get advice on it? And so what I said in my company-wide memo is that I have an expectation of everybody in my organization, doesn't matter who they are, I have the expectation that when they feel that something they're doing is important or expensive, and maybe it's expensive because it's repetitive and it's taking them a lot of time, or maybe it's important because, you just can't afford to mess this one up, or it's important for their careers, their personal development, whatever it is. If it feels important or expensive, you should be asking for advice. Wait, hang on, we knew this the whole time, right? Anybody who's not asking for advice, that feels a little junior in your organizations, right? And you got to teach them, Ask someone for advice. Ask a human for advice. And I say, keep doing that. Asking for advice is an amazing skill. Do that. But for the first time ever, asking for advice is so cheap, right? Doesn't matter how embarrassed you are about asking for that advice. Doesn't matter about your relationship with the person. You can also ask a machine pretty much for free. The same thing. So if your question is so important, why not get a second opinion when the second opinion is really cheap to get? Am I saying stop asking the humans? No, we're too smart for that. We get it, right? And we understand that artificial intelligence wasn't named artificial intelligence because it's intelligent. It was named artificial intelligence because 10 postdocs in 1956 really wanted funding from the US government to go hang out for 2 months and solve all of human behavior. And in order to do this, they needed a good word that would scare the DoD into giving them funding. And they picked artificial intelligence because artificial intelligence, yeah. Okay, so that's why we got stuck with this term that changed throughout time. What does it mean? Does it mean what calculators do today? Does it mean AGI? Who on earth knows? It has drifted over time. And of course, all those AI winters where there were promises in all those grant proposals about how this was going to be applied to things and make everyone a lot of money, and then it didn't work. Then we had to start calling it machine learning, and then machine learning didn't work. Then we had to start calling it AI, up and down, up and down. That was the fashion. In fact, my favorite definition, folks, of the difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning, if it's written in Python, it's probably machine learning, and if it's written in PowerPoint, it's probably AI. Yeah, there you go. So AI really, it's changed what it means. It depends who's talking. And I will also point out that over time, different groups have joined the party to be talking about it. At first, only researchers, and they were usually talking about general purpose math. And then come lots of data and lots of computing power, and all of a sudden we can do something useful with this. We can solve business problems at scale. And then those are the folks talking about AI. But usually it's at enterprise scale because, just because we can do it doesn't mean that either we should do it or that it's cheap to do it. So it's big teams, engineers, and the folks around that ecosystem of applied AI. And now there's a whole nother group. And this group is enormous. And they're all talking about AI as well, talking about it in their own way, not worrying about which researchers or builders they offend. And this, of course, is the users, right? And that's the big groups. There's a big gravity pulling our collective feelings about what AI might mean over into the incredible progress in user interfaces, because that's what this revolution has been. A revolution in interface. Anyone can now think something up and make the attempt to get it automated, which is why I think at the individual level, first, everybody should be asking for advice if it's important. And now advice is cheaper, so whatever your thing is, how about you ask a human and you ask a machine too? And the interface thing is, what do you need to learn in order to use this? That's the big difference. I'm sure that a lot of us, anyone here self-identifies as a nerd with me? I know you can, this is a safe space, this room. Not like that other one with the government people, yeah? Okay, so fellow nerds, the thing about us is that when we were young, and now perhaps, we were masochistic. Because we thought, you know what sounds like a good idea? How about I learn some kind of weird, perverse, unnatural language that's nothing at all like I would have grown up speaking, and then I'm going to express myself to machines and or mathematicians in this way. Right? Like, who has that idea? And yet, it's pretty nice, this clear, structured way of communicating, and particularly when it involves code and getting machines to do things for you, you realize the power and the beauty of being able to say what you want, not what they built for you, what you want, and then the machine does it for you. And that is enough to get you hooked. I tell folks, you know, if you've ever fallen in love with the Harry Potter series or whatever else your brand of magic stories are, right? What's the closest thing to magic spells? It's programming. Abracadabra. Make it so. And that's why we learn these strange languages like abracadabra and Python and C++ and whatever else in order to get our wishes met. And that's the price of admission to automating. You don't want to learn these things? You are going to take what someone else has built for you. You're never going to build your own your way. Right? So it's really a combination between Legos and magic spells. What could be better? That's programming. Except you're learning an unnatural language. And now this interface, the language revolution, allows you to make an attempt to be understood in your mother tongue. So you can just speak what you want, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but you can make the attempt. So this is the world's easiest interface. It used to be, without that microphone over there, it used to be just like a text message, and then you had to be literate. That was the price of admission, but you didn't have to be program it, or whatever you might call that, right? Engineer it. But now with that microphone, you don't even need to be literate. You can speak, and then there's that right-click thing, have it speak back at you. So one could argue that this interface might be the interface that we are teaching our youngest children to use, right? As soon as they got speaking, as soon as they got understanding what they're hearing, ta-da, they have learned this interface. So this is an interface revolution, and no wonder everyone's imaginations are aflame with this at the individual level. So as leaders, all you need to do in your organization is say, hey, can you send a text message? Actually, can you speak? Wonderful. Do you know that asking for advice is awesome? If not, prepare to see your careers take off. Asking for advice is great. Ask machines too. And notice how all those interfaces, they are, yes, I do ask Claude to call me boss. All these interfaces are pretty much the same thing. There's Google's Gemini, and then in a satiric moment, there's this interface, which you probably won't want to put things directly into, just saying. But while we're on the topic of Mandarin, let's say that I am writing the most important email of my life. It's got to go right. It absolutely must. And it has to be in Mandarin, which I don't speak, for those who might be surprised to know this, as a South African. And so I ask ChatGPT, and ChatGPT very helpfully gives me that. So do I send it? Right. Do I just send it? No, I do not. And so we don't need technical skills to get this, but if we're teaching our non-technical staff to be AI first, we're not saying, first use AI and then don't think about it and send off all your most important things. And you know what? That's because AI is intelligent. In fact, AI is more intelligent than you. So, just don't think. No, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is trying to get a little help, trying to get a little advice is cheaper than ever before. That doesn't make the advice good. That doesn't mean you should use the help. As with people, even the smartest people may give you bad advice if they don't have context on what it is that you're actually wanting and doing in your life. Right? What's true for me may just not translate into good advice for you. And the more information you give me, the more I can make an attempt to do it better. But still, at the end of the day, you must be responsible for what's important to you and what it means for something to be useful and good for you. Yes, now we get into these words like useful, which is just a tiny hop, skip, and a jump to good, and then we're in philosophy, and then we're all screwed, right? Which is where these things land us up, because we begin to see that we don't get to spend time tinkering the tech quite as much, and avoiding thinking about what's important, what's good, what's useful, what that means for us, and that it does not mean the same thing for everybody. So what we need is a culture of getting advice, but also being a little bit judicious about which advice we take, which is a culture of testing. When something is really important, think first about what it would mean to get something good and useful for you out of whatever advisor, human or otherwise, and how would you check? How do you think about trust? I often say that trust is now the grand challenge, humanity's grand challenge, the grand challenge of leadership going forward. How do you think about trust? How do you trust complex computer systems? How do you trust colleagues? Which colleagues do you trust? What about groups of people? Which groups? And what if all these people are variously augmented by technologies that they have various levels of personal trust into? And then as a recovering statistician who's not fully recovered, I say, well, I don't even trust myself. This is why we as engineers, when we write the code, also write tests just in case. Test everything, trust nothing, trust no one. That's how you're super safe. And then you find yourself realizing you can't do everything on your own, so you're gonna have to trust, but at least you know that you are trusting, and you think a lot about whom you're trusting. Because you can't go and read and think about every single thing. You've got to do some trusting, but you've got to be aware of how trust works for you as a human, as a leader, and that's the kind of thing that you're going to need to coach your organization on. Just because it says intelligent doesn't mean you should trust it right off the bat. Even the most intelligent colleague, if they don't have the right context, or if they don't know what you're going for in life and what you're optimizing and what you need, they might not be able to help you. So know what advice is worth taking. And this makes answers and advice very cheap. So we used to have these textbooks where you would be shown how to go through a very arduous, we still have these textbooks for now, very arduous process to get from a question to an answer. And because that process was so arduous, and maybe this is a data science question, and maybe to answer this data science question, you first have to design the data collection. Before that, you have to get all the business and legal stuff squared away. You have to figure out what question you have to design the data collection. You have to go and build the engineering pipelines. You have to go and collect all of it in practice, process it all, report it, bring it to leaders. Now, maybe some of that, super quick. That should slightly terrify the leader, because you know what's happening while all that 6 months of huffing and puffing is going on? The leader has some bonus time to think about what question they're actually asking. They have time to change their mind. They have time to mull over it and have their shower thoughts. But in a world with cheap answers, questions matter more than ever. You can keep asking useless questions that have nothing to do with your priorities, and you might get answers. And these answers could be just as useless, but you might be tempted to act. Maybe because you're used to that. So we live in this world of the new 42. You know Douglas Adams's 42? We'll get answers. So do we actually understand what the question was? That's the bit to do. That's the bit to focus on. And for everyone, it will be different. That's why it's going to matter who's in charge, whom we trust. Who's steering this ship anyway? Right? So we are moving into a world of cheap answers. And use that. The answers are cheap, but now the questions matter more than ever. And so if you're going to be an AI-first organization where everybody, no matter how technical, is in the business of receiving cheap answers, then everybody in the organization, no matter how technical, should be thinking about the quality of their questions. And the quality of your questions depends on your connection with your priorities. And so that's where to start. It's awfully easy to ignore all that because you're saying, I'm just doing some technical tinkering. I don't have to think about this right now. But as that becomes simpler, the hardest bits come to the forefront. So what is AI first for individuals? Take good advice. Seek it hungrily and understand that the answers are less important than the questions themselves. But of course, we know this too. ChatGPT is not a business strategy. Is it anybody's business strategy here? Did I just break any hearts? No, this is a room in which I can run my mouth and get away with it. It's great. Okay, so we are in agreement about this. So we've got something different at the organizational level. And here, I think it's worth for your people as you're training them to really separate two categories. The category of tool use, which is part of our noble nature as a tool-using and tool-making species, right? This is why we have this and not a mud hut. Because we make and we use tools. Awesome. So the attitude of, can I use something to make this better? This thing that's important to me, let's do it better. While I'm in the room, while I'm operating the tool, that's tool use. And then there's this other one, automation. Somewhat related with the word autonomous, I suppose. Define them how you like. That's between you and you. This business of definitions. I've taken too many math courses. I know you're right at the top of your page. Let X equals. You define it clearly, you proceed. So we can say, let automation equals. Essentially, can I step away from direct involvement with whatever I've made? Because if I can get it done while I'm asleep, I can get it done while I'm in another country, I can get it done next week, and then I can scale because I can do this once or maybe twice in parallel or 2,000 or 2 million or 2 billion times. So that's where the autonomous and automation pieces really start to play out. Because there's only so much you can scale yourself with a tool or a lever. Still depends on you. But when you can take yourself out of the equation after you've kicked off your, let's call it, magic spell of code, then you can go really big. And the trouble with things that we're tempted to call autonomous is they're not really autonomous, right? They start with humans. And they start with human priorities, whatever humans thought were important enough to automate, whatever humans thought was important enough to do in the first place, right? So it always starts with humans. But the difference is that there is this massive lingering effect. We could create things that are so complicated that we don't realize what we've done as we've set them into motion. It doesn't change the fact that we've still done it, but it might begin to overwhelm our ability to think about what we've done. What this sounds like to me is a bigger challenge for leaders, a bigger call to responsibility, a bigger call to thinking about what it is that we're trying to achieve in the world and how we would know if we got there. So if we're going to talk about AI, and as I said, I'm not sure I like the artificial intelligence acronym Is it intelligent? What is intelligence? Does it scare people? That worked. But maybe we'll say AI could be augmented individuals in the first case. Tool use on steroids. And then automation and integration. Because that's what we're going to get. Automation at scale. And so let's think about automation then. There are these two words we see, data and code. And I find that for getting funding, these are very useful words. But I find that for having sensible conversations with your team members, they might be a little too sleek and shiny. Maybe we need more humble words. Words like instructions, because that's what code is, instructions in some perverse, unnatural language. And examples, just what data points are. And then if we think about the difference between these two approaches to teaching, let's say, a human, forget machines for a moment. We're going to teach a person how to do a really important task. Really, really important, has to be done well. You can't mess this up. Or at least try, please try not to mess this up. It's important for the business and we're going to do it at scale. We're going to impact the world. Maybe we're going to touch 1, 10, 1,000 people's lives. So please learn this task properly. 1 million people, 1 billion people. Wait, that sounds like a machine. Let's say you're teaching a human. They're going to do some important thing. 10 times it matters. You can teach them how to do this task one of two ways. You may either use explicit instructions. Do this, then do that, then do that, then do that. Or you may say, here are some examples. Maybe watch me do it a few times. You figure out how to do it. For this important task of yours, why might you prefer the approach of instructions? Yes, audience. We are talking with one another. Consistency. It's proven. What's that? Alignment. Fear. Good. Better to be feared than to be loved, right? What else? Repetition. That one we're going to argue about. High cost of failure, right? High cost of failure is what we are all talking about, folks. We're all tapping into the same vein, which I'm just going to go ahead and name it. You know, as a recovering control freak, the word I'm looking for is control. That's what we want, right? Because here's some examples. You go figure out what's common among them. You go figure out how to do it your way. You better hope. You better hope they see in those examples what you see in those examples. You better hope, because they might not. But if you know exactly how this very important thing should be done, and you can be guaranteed that they will follow your instructions, as a computer will, it will either follow your instructions or be blah, then you get control. So what would possess you to get excited about a technology that tells you that, well, the first thing we're going to do is throw control out the window, shall we? That's not how we're going to automate. Everyone's like, yeah, AI. Folks, why? Why are we doing this? What would make it worth it if the task is important? Discover what you may have missed. We will hang that on the list of things that converge into the answer I am looking for. So yes, but I want more. The task's important though, right? That it's faster. It'll just be a creative solution. It's faster. We don't want to think about it. Those things are all in the category of the task doesn't matter. The task doesn't matter, so we'll get what we get. And yes, that's helpful for innovation. Let's try it out. It doesn't matter too much. But let's suppose that it does matter. Let's suppose it does matter. Why do we give up control? So, again, let's imagine you're white-knuckling it through this one. Cost, trust, scaling. Okay, so this one really helps. When you go back to your organizations and you use this as the framework for how you talk to them about what AI has as both its promise and its peril. So, on the one hand, control. Why would you give up control? See, here is my trick. The way I set this up is I suggested to you, though I didn't say it straight up, I suggested to you that you know the answer, the right way to do the task. And in that situation where you know what the instructions are, on this really important task, you know them and they are the best instructions and they are good, right? You know the answer. Don't give up control. Don't do that. So the reason that you want to go over to AI, the reason you're going to use data in the first place, is that the task is too complicated for you to come up with the instructions for, which might mean that because it's so complicated, you don't know what the most efficient or cost-effective or correct or fast or simple or whatever else answer is. You don't know it. And because you don't know it, because you can't come up with it, then we go and enter a dance with complexity. Right? That's why we're here. We automate with data because that is how we handle situations where the answer is too complicated for us to know. Which is great, right? This is why I'm excited by AI. How wonderful. Because we might hit a wall if all we do is automate the things that fit in our heads. Because I'm not sure if you know this, but our working memory is like, so-so. Right? If I show you 50 digits, I take them off the screen, I'm like, what did you just see? Good luck to you. And yet, the computer stores all 50 and I can flip back and forth as much as I like. So in some sense, are our tools better than us at memory? Absolutely. And so is a pencil and paper, by the way. Our memory is not so great. So if we're only going to automate those things where the solution fits in our heads, we're not going to automate solutions to humanity's biggest problems. So if we want to move past the low-hanging fruit, we move over to the complicated stuff. We invite complexity, and with complexity comes opportunity. With complexity comes a quantum leap in progress, and with complexity comes risk and all kinds of other problems. And this also helps when people say, I really want to know how the AI is doing its thing that it's doing. Well, let's say we started reading from the top and it was really complicated, and you got about 5 pages in out of 1 million. You can keep reading, it's just not going to help you very much. Right? If the solution is so long and complicated, it just doesn't fit in your head. But can we succeed at the task? Maybe. That's what data gives us. That's why we automate with data. And why we really do brace ourselves as leaders as to what we're inviting into our lives. And that's why the second half of my AI First memo, AI First for organizations, is if we're going to automate at scale, with data, with complexity, then that's a hang of a lot of responsibility. And so with great scale must come great responsibility. You must think very carefully about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And is this the best way to do it? I think that we will get a lot of AI applications, a lot of progress from AI, just naturally. Just because there are things that we want to do. There are problems we must solve. And we don't need to appeal to the AI-ness of it. Maybe we're better off not making that appeal. Because you know what the number one rule of complexity is? So I love this moment on Twitter. This fellow BJ May, he goes for a walk. He's got this Nest front door smart camera. It's supposed to identify whose face is it and then keep intruders out. And he complains that his house locked him out because it was protecting everyone from Batman. Right, Batman, exactly. So the number one rule of complexity is expect the unexpected. And because of this, of course, the engineers... If you think this one's good, well, you all heard about the Virgin Money chatbot that berated its users for the use of the word virgin. That one's even funnier. Anyway, So expect the unexpected here. What engineers need to do is know that mistakes are possible. And that immediately makes everything safer because they just build in things like, here's a pin pad, and if we put in our pin code, then it doesn't matter if Batman was the one who was spotted. It's just part of knowing when we deal with the complex, we get mistakes. Now, the number one rule of agentic AI is when we take all this complexity and we connect it to the world, which is itself complex. So that number one rule is what works in theory doesn't always work in practice. Or to put this another way, knowing what you want to do may be easier than actually doing it safely, reliably, at scale, in production with a whole lot of moving parts. Because however complicated the data to solutions, to models situation was, the agentic one is more complicated. Why do we do this? Because it's worth it. But then as leaders, we step up and we do it wisely. That's the key thing. And of course, I have this analogy for AI. I've always been saying AI is like the proliferation of magic lamps with genies in them. And we know from all those genie stories that it's not the genie that's dangerous, right? It's the unskilled wisher. There's a third component there that I haven't spoken so much about, which is the lamp. So it doesn't matter about the genie if your lamp is more powerful than the genie and keeps it controlled. And if the genie doesn't even get to the wisher, lamp can keep everything safe. In agentic AI, the lamp is the piece you might want to think the most about. Right? What is the lamp? What are those guardrails? What is that control? What are you giving the genie access to versus not? But please do think about the wisher also. That's you guys. And so instead of saying, how can I apply AI in my business, which is what everybody is saying as their AI first philosophy, I grumpily say no to this and say, in our AI first take, we're going to take AI out of it. Instead, here's what I want you to think about. What used to be impossible? That's it. What used to be impossible? And if it used to be impossible, and making it possible would be bad for your business, let it stay impossible. Don't try to do it. It's bad for you. You don't need it. But if it used to be impossible, and making it possible could be really good for you, your team, your business, the world, well, AI might just have put the impossible on the table. So don't start with AI. And if you're getting pressure from your board like you need AI everywhere, no, what you need to do is rethink impossible. Rethink what your business needs. And that's, again, that same awful lot of responsibility as in the individual case, right back on you. What are my priorities? What's important? What do I want to see in this world? And once you've got that, well, why is that impossible? Why can't I do it? And is it actually impossible? Finding those impossible things and making them possible, making progress. That's the AI first organization with asterisk needs responsible leaders. And this, by the way, is a little QR code. All these little QR codes are to various, hello, software update. Expect the unexpected. Exactly. I did that on purpose. This was part of my magic trick. Right. So this is me just walking you through the day that OpenAI's operator came out. I played with it, so I was up at 3 a.m, not sleeping like I was supposed to, like trying to get it to book my travel for me and going into Canva and making a self-referential infographic, which was terrible. Anyway, you can go take a look at what that looked like on day one. And then you'll realize that a lot of the things that it's doing poorly because it's not useful for business to do it well. Like a lot of it isn't actually a technical hurdle. So then we realize, imagine the world when people find ways, right, to make good money with this technology to make their businesses better. A lot more is possible than you realize. And now, in the last 2 minutes or so, I want to play this game with you that I like to play with all rooms now, because I like this one first, because I like it when you shout at me. Which you were a great audience, by the way. You really interacted with my control and complexity thing. But now I want to invite every single one of you to exercise your lungs and perform a very difficult job for me, right? I will show you a picture of an animal and you will shout cat or not cat. That is your job. Can you do this? Yes, everybody? Okay, let's do this thing. Cat. Love it. Not cat. Cat. You're very good at this. Not cat. Not cat. You had one job. What is Schrodinger's cat? What? You had one job. It's cat or it's not cat. And we begin to see what the leader might be for. Because data are not objective. Our objectives are not objective. Our goals, our priorities are not objective. And the right answer here doesn't depend on some platonic form. The right answer here depends on purpose. What is this system actually for? And the leader, the decision maker, has to fill these, big boots, which I'm going to do for you, and come up with what is this for, and therefore what should the right answer be? Because there's no one platonic, all contexts right answer. It depends. And so I will tell you that the purpose of this system is to be a pet recommendation system. And so when it says cat, the animal had better be from the feline family, approximately, Midjourney 4.0, and in its typical adult form, safe to cuddle. We shall try it again. Cat or not cat? Not cat. And if you're still saying cat, take out more life insurance. Right. The answer reveals itself now that we get the purpose. And you also realize that if someone built this very performant pet recommendation system and tells you how performant it is and gives you all its scores, and you want to take this and apply it somewhere where the right answer for your needs would have been cat, system's not going to work very well for you. Which is why, of course, testing becomes very important, and testing in your situation and thinking about what question or need is the system answering in the first place. And don't worry, it's not just you. I have been doing this since I had bangs, 2 sets of bangs ago. And this is my Making Friends with Machine Learning course. It's got its QR code there for the playlist. It's, between 1 minute and 4 minute videos on all kinds of topics. And here I'm doing this with a bunch of engineers, exactly the same thing. What I'm trying to say here is that the definition of mistake depends on purpose. The definition of right, the definition of good. And the purpose depends on the people. And who represents the people is the leader, the adult in charge, you guys. And you are dealing with a world where there is no one right answer, but getting those answers is cheaper than ever. So the purpose, the priorities, the questions, the direction you choose to go in, and your clarity of thought around that matters more than ever. So you're going to have to be the author of meaning. That's what this AI world does for you. All of a sudden, those questions, which were the hardest questions, what's worth doing? What, Socrates, is a good life? Those are rolled back. And the technical bits are just in service of that now. But we are really standing on the edge of so much progress. When we can automate, when we can create these complex models and attach them to solving complex problems in the real world with agentic AI, wow, we can do so much. But it means leadership is so important today. And so I'll leave you with this as we ask questions. My opinion is that AI will raise the bar for all these things that sound like soft skills, but they're not soft skills. In fact, I would say that what we call soft skills are the skills that are hardest to automate. We must lead. We must have clearer vision. As in the genie stories, a decision maker who's not clear about what they're trying to do and isn't able to communicate that clearly, they're a hazard. Leadership, the taking of responsibility, managing, guiding, motivating complex systems of humans, complex machine systems, and then complex systems of the two working together. Decision intelligence, the discipline of turning information, data, information through our senses, into better action, the start and finish of a process, collaboration skills, responsibility, standards of trust, whom do we trust, which machines, which people, which combinations, comfort with uncertainty, and then perhaps above all, love of change, because change is going to happen faster and faster. We may as well learn to love it. Thank you very much.